All right, so we're joined from Kosciusko, Mississippi, home of the Whippets. From Homegrown Farms, the owner and founder of Homegrown Farms, Kelli Randle. We thank you so much for joining us. This is our entrepreneurship class at Velma Jackson High School, and we're recording this for all of our friends at Madison Central High School, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, and our YouTube channel. So, brand new business owner, we thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Now, before we get into what all it is you do at Homegrown Farms, because it's a really cool concept and they're very interested in it, tell us a little bit about your background. You are from Kosciusko, went to Kosciusko High School, went to Millsaps and played basketball, and had kind of a regular path there for a while. So, tell us about your high school to college transition and how you kind of got into this entrepreneurship role.
Yeah, in high school, ball was life. I played a lot of basketball. But I was also a little loner, and going off into college, had an opportunity to keep on playing basketball. That was very exciting. I thought about Air Force at one point and just had to pause on that. Went through and played basketball, majored in sociology, minor in psychology. Really started at a physical science kind of background in biology, but moved into social science. Was very curious about social justice and about the things that I constantly saw in my small town, and just like had big questions like, why is the world set up like this, and why does this happen, and just had a very deep rabbit hole kind of mind about things sometimes. And so sociology helped me get to not the bottom of it, but it helped me lead to a lot of ways of different organizations in the time that would bring me to doing that. And I actually post college got into a program called City Year in AmeriCorps. And so I
Yeah.
was kind of a part-time educator. I ended up moving to New Orleans for a couple of years. Had the opportunity to serve at the Honorable George Washington Carver in the Upper Ninth Ward. I had a chance to work in the library, coached some basketball, worked in the ninth grade, 12th grade English class. So I just got a lot of ins and out of the school, and really got to enjoy the school mostly. My second year in New Orleans, I did a program more specifically to coaching called Up to Us Sports, and it was coaching through the core of like centering emotional and social healing for athletes. And so I really geared to that because that was something that basketball had did for me as a young athlete, and moving into college was like it was so much more than just the court. It brought me a lot of healing through just like mental health purposes. So did that program my second year, and it was closing in a little bit closer to the pandemic, and you know in the city where I was coaching, they had a little garden space on the side of the school, and it just always spoke to me when I would see the teacher come out with the students, and I was like, man, that's so cool. And I'm just like, this time in my life, I'm just thinking about like what's the holistic health of an athlete, not only the mental health, not only the social
Oh,
aspects, but like body wellness and all those things. Because I also grew up in a boys and girls club here in Kosciusko that had different programs that would teach us, as we were growing older, just different things of wellness. And so it just caught my eye. And then I was also in a time where I was just researching a lot of like Black Southern rural land history, learning about Fannie Lou Hamer, learning about the work that, Medgar Evers did in canvassing in the Delta, just realizing that my family come from like a rural background and that they sustained themselves off the land that they lived on. And so this was just like sending off like all kinds of firecrackers in my spirit, and just like, wow, like this is where I come from. But I spent so much time on the court growing up. Like, I didn't like video games. It's not that I didn't like being outside, but if I was outside, I was playing basketball. And I was just like, wow, like I remember going to Holmes County and being in the cow field with my uncle, and he calling me a city girl because I didn't want to be outside and stepping in cow dung. Um, and in this time, it was just being a full circle. All these things was tapping back into my spirit of like, oh wow, this is actually my roots. Not only in the state, but also very directly in my immediate family. And so as pandemic, the shutdown was happening, I came and visited my mom back here in Kosciusko. And I was like, Mom, I want to visit where you grew up, where we would go back, kind of often growing up, but like just life and, just spreading you out sometimes. And she was like, okay. And so we went and we toured it. We walked around the land, had, uncle that was running cows on it at the time. And, I was like, I want to see, my father grew up. My father passed when I was 5, but I was very deeply like knew my aunties and my uncles and whatnot. And I was like, I want to go to my father's land too. And so went there and toured it, and like had my older cousin who's running cows on that land and has horses, and my oldest auntie who's 86 and still chops greens in her garden, and goes out there and burns the land and resets it. Like I spent time with them as things were kind of like just closed off. It really was a time for me to open up to things that I just haven't been able to slow down and just pay attention to. And so during that trip, Greg, like I just felt moved to like start farming. I felt moved to
Wow.
just tap back into sufficient ways that had came from directly from my lineage that had helped them survive but not only thrive. And so I was like, I'm gonna move back to Mississippi and farm. I was still living in New Orleans at the time, just visiting back. But I was like, yeah, I'm gonna move back and farm. And going back into New Orleans, I had this really dope opportunity. I was like researching like farm apprenticeships or like how to learn how to weld and how to learn how to build. Like just looking for all kinds of opportunities because I'm also like you got to learn farm skills. You just can't, you also got to learn how to like weld and build and plumbing. And so, just always been a person that like I love movement and moving my body. So like trades were also like sticking out for me. And so I found this really cool program in New Orleans called Green Corps, which it intersects construction and green infrastructure in the city. And so I was learning about the landscape of New Orleans in a way that I hadn't because I was deep into AmeriCorps. If anybody knows AmeriCorps, it's a lot of hours, a big commitment. And just really enjoyed it. Got a chance to talk through rain gardens and go to the not only the neighborhood I was living in, but also on the east in New Orleans where they were creating rain gardens and folks' yards, and they would invite community come out, and they were literally like the experts in their projects, and I really appreciated that. Met this really great guy, Jeff. I can't think of Jeff's last name, but he like grew up on a rice farm, and he was like leading this project with the community, and so I was there. Even the times we didn't have to be there, I was like, yes, this is it. Like learning how to work with the land to create infrastructure. And we're also doing this very like environmental like justice also at this time too, because we had a chance to work on like habitat of humanity that were building houses that would create more flood resistance for these homes. So I was on fire about it. I was getting excited. I was just like, I'm working with the land. I'm learning how to like not only to work with the land, but like how to build like shelter and housing with the land as well. And so I did that for I think it was a program for about 12 weeks. Met some really dope people. And in that time I was like, Mom, like, hey, can I land back at the house for a little bit while I figure this out? And like, I was like, keep your eyes open for any opportunities. And so at the turn of the year, I moved back home and was still looking for farm apprenticeships and fell into a farm apprenticeship here in South Mississippi through a program with Silk-Culture in Utica, Mississippi. Shout out to them. They're doing amazing work. Did an apprenticeship with them. Was learning how to biointensively grow crops, organic vegetables. Was able to break ground with them. So I really saw like just those beginning steps with that work. Implemented an elder share where they gave away all our produce that we were harvesting to the elders in their community weekly. Just got a lot of hands-on experiences, a lot of just like historical history of that area of like Tuskegee roots through Utica, and understanding that like ag-based schools is not a school of the past, and like here's also something that's like very tied to like this southern rural landscape history as well. And so really enjoyed that experience, and during that time I was able to be blessed with buying some land back in Kosciusko. And so in the turn of time I took like a year to kind of like regroup and really gain some more capital. Made some more connections, had a really dope chance to work with a worm farmer in Jackson. Shout out to Matt Castile with Wormworks. Had times where he would
All right, so we had some technical difficulties, but we're back with Kelli Randle. And as we were paused there for a second, I was telling the class here, it was amazing how much planning and training you did before you jumped into business, because a big mistake a lot of entrepreneurs make is they just open because they have the passion. And like you said, that's important. but you learned skills, you built capital, you had a plan before you opened, which led us to Homegrown Farms, which you have recently opened. And as you've told me what all you do, but it's a really cool concept. So tell us about what Homegrown Farms does and what it provides for the community, because we always say entrepreneurs solve a problem. And you have found a way to start solving a problem, like you mentioned, with holistic health in the rural Black community.
Yeah. And to your point of training and just really kind of researching, like it's so many things that I feel like with starting this business and just this stewardship journey for myself, that it was only so much I could like take in before it was time to just like as I feel like it's a good mantra, like you gotta mess around to find out. I could learn how to, do so much, and it was like, all right, now I just gotta kind of dive in and find out what things I haven't learned. So it's been a lot of growing pains and a lot of reflection very directly in this wintertime that I've realized that like, okay, like this is an important part of entrepreneurship and like as you keep on moving. But I would say my work, as it's still being blooming, Homegrown Farms is still blooming. Like for me, the holistic health of being with the land, during also the pandemic, as it was, a lot of times to be introspective and a lot of grief we was dealing with, a lot of loss. Like the land helped so much in just holding a lot of that emotional weight. And so it was very healing in that way to be moving in the soil, to be cultivating, was very empowering. And learning how to grow like organic food, like this very nutrient dense food. Like also like learning that, sometimes a lot of times the food we eat, looks pretty, but it's a reason it looks pretty. It's a reason it lasts as long as it does, and like understanding the like seed to preservation like journey of like food, and really get into that. And just like gathering, like the intention of like coming to the land and gathering and having those social just gatherings with folks on land, farm to table kind of moments, or farm to like, my next kin, or I'm dropping off at the church or at this event. And so that's the goal of this vision. And also to have retreat. Like, I lived in Jackson's not huge, but it's more of a city than Kosciusko, and then New Orleans is a bigger city, but to have a retreat from the city as well. I think that even in New Orleans, like I enjoyed the city, I enjoyed the culture and just so much of the liveliness. And at the same time, I miss trees. I missed like being in an open space. Like I was just like, I'm excited. I want to go to this party and dance and go second line, and I want to like retreat. And so I want to have that offering to folks as well. Specifically to Black folks, specifically to people that are aligned with Black folks and Black queer people, with Black trans folks. And so yeah, and just to allow another big thing is like sufficiency. Whether it's like, a small family or self-sufficiency, and then that grows into community sufficiency, but just like learning skills and trades. Like I really have this vision of, people that are better at trade and been, doing trades their whole life, was welding and doing hair or, building, then they can come here and offer workshops on the farm and teach and skill share. Cause like, yeah, like of course it's a business. I understand, it's always kind of pull and tug of like being a social entrepreneur of like solving a problem, helping folks, and things need to be sustained. But it's a way you can sustain your community where, you get good at one thing, you get good at another thing, and we all kind of pour into each other. And so really want to offer that as well. Cause I don't know, like, Greg, no scares, but like a lot of things are kind of outgrowing in the society. Like they're imploding in different ways. And, I'm just trying to be just solution oriented through all the things that we're constantly witness, between all the conflicts that are constantly getting bigger, and just like people going to grocery stores and not seeing food, and people buying up, all the bread, and like it's just like, what are we gonna do in these things for? What are we gonna do with these things like can't hold the capacities that need to hold for our communities anymore? And so that's why I say what homegrown is currently blooming into. And so
That's incredible. And before I get to the students' questions, I did want to just briefly talk about, what all are you selling right now? Because obviously it is a process to, some things are easier to grow than others. And I'm not a garden expert, but I would imagine some things are easier to grow than others. So what are you selling and what are you planning on selling in the future?
So interestingly enough, Greg, like I most of my hands-on training came with vegetables, and I'm actually raising goats right now. Um, I started with goats. I'm selling goats right now. Goats got introduced to my farming plan once I came out to my land. It was very overgrown. A lot of wild blueberry vines, and so I was just like, very moving in this very kind of mindset of like I want to be very like regenerative and work with the land, the experience. I was like, I don't want to just come and clear it with just a tractor or a lot of that overhead, which I still had to do kind of anyway. But I was like, I'm gonna get goats and just let them run and eat down, this area, and then I'll slowly progress on and on. So once the goats got here, just being ignorant and not doing some on research, like goats are some of the most like prolific escapers. Like they will just find a way to go. So then I had to like invest in like, infrastructure to, care for
Yeah.
these goats and to keep them in. And so that was a big learning experience. And but I also, it was like y'all can stick around. Like let me learn about y'all. Like I also wanted to, and the goal of my farm plan is to multi-graze animals on the farm. So I'm just like, hey, didn't mean to start with you, but now you're here and we're gonna work it together. So I've been having goats for um a little bit over a year now. I have a herd of like seven nannies. Just have a few kids on the yard, and so um yeah. So I have some kids. I have one baby goat, male goat right now that's beautiful. His name is Tux. He's black and white, and in the coming weeks and months, it's gonna be time for him to find a home. And so that's been my most consistent raising right now. Um, but looking to start some seeds in the next coming weeks. Um, really want to grow some cabbage, our greens. Looking at later on some black eyed peas, very like culture specific food because I want to be mindful of that. Like that's what I feel like folks are looking for. Like I want to grow what folks want, and at the same time I want to slowly introduce things that are like that are different kind of like greens in my experience at culture. Like we learned like my farm manager like mentioned like here's another green that we may not eat, but folks may slowly come into it. Swiss chard, another leafy green that you can toss in there with your greens as well. That's very like durable, like can stand a frost, can stand some heat. And so thinking through things to slowly introduce in there as well. I really want to try some flowers. Like flowers does something for my spirit. Um, I haven't started my research on flowers, but I'm gonna dive into it eventually. And find this way to companion plant with flowers and herbs as well to work on pest management. Which is a very ancient, practice. And so thinking through things like that, knowing that I have an amazing herbalist not too far from me, Holmes County. Um, one of my elders, Miss Ursine, growing herbs right in Holmes County. And so looking to start small with vegetables because being that I started some of my practices or 100-foot rows, like I know how quickly they can become, yeah, a lot more labor. And so I literally just had a meeting not so long ago looking to possibly get a hoop house. And so that's going to really be a game changer in how I'm able to start the season early and extend the season. And so just looking to
Wow.
like some vegetables to like be able to hand out to folks and, possibly go ahead and call one of my animals to be able to offer, meat. And so it's going to be a slow thing. Like, I think I really enjoyed this, just like the idea of just sharing it first to see to get people's like feedback and just see it how much of a pace that I can keep up with and things of that nature. I did have a really good time last season selling watermelon, so I'm gonna do that again. I actually will go and get them from Smith County and bring them back to the county and sell them. Beautiful fruit. People go crazy about some good yellow meat watermelon. And so I just really enjoyed that. Got a chance to collaborate with the local cooperative here, self-help cooperative here in Natala County. We fundraised with watermelon, for a whole salads day, which is a little bit outside of Kosciusko, but still in Tyler County, and just had a great time and enjoyed that experience riding up and down to Smith County to get watermelons and come back with a truckload of watermelon. So that was a really fun experience and something a crop that I'm looking to become, good at as well.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point about you wanted to sell what people will buy, because obviously you are about serving the community. But I think a mistake so many entrepreneurs make, no matter what they're selling, they just worry about what they like. But you have to worry
Right,
about what market likes, and I think
right,
that's so great you said that, and you mentioned research, market research, because you can try to sell what you like all day long, but your tastes are not the same as your customers all the time. So that's a very great
exactly.
point. I'm glad you made that. But I do have some questions from the students. This first one is Braylon Carter. He's in ninth grade. And he asked, what has been the hardest accomplishment you have achieved in all of your time in this venture?
That's a great question, Braylon. And whew, the hardest accomplishment. It's so many when you start out. I would say just being consistent. Just being consistent, really. And like um I've learned from one conference I went to, ideally the time to really like kind of see the return of some of your investment is 7 to 8 years. And being a little bit, I get from my elders that I'm young and I'm young starting this, but I'm like, I'm pushing 30. And so to be thinking about that window being a little bit closer to, another decade of my life, like, it's just like, okay, we're doing this. But I would say that consistency and seeing when I'm consistent, just the fruits of that labor to really start to fruit and folks start to see you, and respect you and be willing to support you. I would say that's been a hard accomplishment, because I would say that it's a lot of hard days on the farm where you just like gotta, pick up that shovel and think you about to solve something, and then you gotta also put it down because you don't have enough time or you don't have enough resources and to really kind of like move on that solution at that time. So hope that's a good answer for you, Braylon. But just being consistent sometimes and what you
Yeah,
want to, with
and
your vision.
I think that's a great answer. I think that's a great answer because everybody wants to do the fun stuff, but they don't want to do the grunt work. And I think that's such a great point in entrepreneurship. This is Christian Wolf. He's a senior, and he asks, "Is it hard being a female running a farm?"
Christian, yes, I think as a person that has like moved into a lot of male dominant industries, whether it's trades or like hard trades or ag trades, or the two the same. Like, yeah, you get a lot of people to undermine you and question or think you're starting a hobby, or you know, um, as you're learning something sometimes, and if you don't know the right terms for things and right, all that, just the comments that people will say. But I've kind of learned to just kind of like close off those things, and also like understanding how more important it is for me to kind of not only blaze this trail for myself, but blaze this trail for um other female farmers, other non-binary farmers, other young black farmers, other young black Southern farmers, that come from any type of background and want to do this work. And you just, I know that before me, people had to blaze trails, so that doesn't mean that the work stops when my existence and the work that I have, called upon me. And so it's hard, you get undermined and you get called little, or Miss Lady and all the things. And sometimes you just gotta understand that, like, what's destined for you, and when you have, when you're just determined. And for me, I'm a spiritual person, so when I've been preyed upon, my existence has been preyed upon my whole life. I just feel like some things are just, oh, it's things outside me that's working with me. But it's difficult, it's difficult. And you have to find those affirmations, and you got to find the people that are on your team and hear their voices instead of other voices.
Love it. I just got one more, and this is I love this question. This is Donovan Harris. He's a senior here. And he asked, what things that you have in store for in the future are you most excited about with your business?
Donovan, yes, this is one of my why things that keeps me going. But like having events out here. Like I want to have events like very on the land events, just like where it's like um it's we have a tent and a nice table, and it's very intentionally set up with the food from the farm, from the rows, and we pick it together and we prepare it together.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
I offer it like just to have those moments of just fellowship here. Just have those moments of fellowship. Like I'm excited to, just drop an address and tell people to pull up and, just bring themselves and, come in there, attire that feels good and just have ceremony with the land and what it has offered me and what it will offer folks that are constantly around me, community that I build. And so I'm excited about like just very small, intimate gatherings. I am.
That's awesome. I mean, and that shows the small town Mississippi ideals aren't dead. I think that's great for a place like Kosciusko to have that sense of community and for you to recognize that and see that you can profit off that. I think that's such a cool idea. Now we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for fitting this in your schedule because I know you're getting pulled a lot of directions right now. But before we go, just you know, you grew up in a similar type situation, rural Mississippi, young black kid in rural Mississippi, just like our community is, just like some kids that I'll see this later are. But you're living proof that if you work hard and do the research and do the planning, you can be successful as a business person. So, talk about what they can do to take those steps to be successful in their own right.
Yeah. Research can happen every day. When we're on social media, when we're in our places of just daily life, or we're in church and school, start just paying attention to what do you feel like your community needs. What are people saying that they need? Be able to identify those things, um, and be like aware of like the social issues that we deal with directly in our communities, in the world, and also look at your strengths. Look at what people are constantly affirming about, oh, you should look more into that, you know what I'm saying? Or you're really good at that. Like start listening to those people because they're identifying something that you either see in yourself or like is a light for you to like turn on. And just keep building that craft, like build that craft. And you can be multi-dimensional. This craft leads into another craft, and this craft leads into another craft. Remain humble, but also be confident. It's a nice balance, as you're moving into these things. Like be humble, but also be confident that things are for you, and like you have the ability to do things that you like put your mind to, and you can't let nobody tell you different. You literally can't. And so those are just pay attention, like have the awareness and keep notes in your phone, sticky pads, journal, and just keep those thoughts with you. And be willing to fall, but be most willing to get back up.
Love it.
And so, yeah.
I love it. Now, but real quick before we go, tell them where they can find Homegrown Farms if they're ever, in Attala County and want to see what all you got going on.
Yeah, Homegrown Farms is in Attala County right now. I'm still working on like media to share. I'll be starting a small newsletter, hopefully, probably about mid-spring to share more. Um, but right now I'm on Instagram at Farmer in the Kales. That's Farmer in the Kales, KELS_. Don't have any other social media at the time right now. But I'm a
Hey,
little bit, it's coming together slowly but surely. And yeah, I'm excited to share and be more open to this process.
love it. Well, again, we thank you so much for joining us. Kelli Randle, right there in Kosciusko, owner and founder of Homegrown Farms in Kosciusko, Mississippi. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you all, Greg.
All right. Thank you so much. Talk to you later, buddy.
All right.